just watched this in the past couple months. Do we see the Mitchums?
Not yet.
Not
yet.
yet. They have
so.
not
Okay.
been introduced. So.
No, we get to the end, and you know who else we don't see yet is Diane. So none of that yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
She's mentioned, even though we don't know that's who they're mentioning.
Right.
But she's mentioned. So, welcome back to anyone that's watching. And I have one word for everyone. If you're watching now or later, hello.
Oh, man. Let me tell you right now. When this came out, there were so many people who did not know what to think of Dougie Jones.
Yeah.
And I loved Dougie because I'm just like, I don't know where this is going, but Kyle MacLachlan is so goddamn charming in this part that I'm willing to just see where it plays out. But watching this again, the thing I'm going to come out right here and say is so many people are like, I wish there was more Agent Cooper. I wish there was more Agent Cooper. To me, Dougie is like all the goodness of Agent Cooper distilled into like one human being. Like everything that we love about Cooper is all there. It's figuring out how to sort itself, but all the good things about Dale Cooper are in Dougie Jones. And to me, as I was watching it again the second time, I'm like, we are with Cooper. Like we really are. Like you think you're not, but you really, really are when you start looking at how Dougie acts, how he responds to people, how he helps people, even inadvertently helps people. He's absolutely all the goodness of Agent Cooper, the childlike innocence and wonder of Agent Cooper distilled into a human form. And I am a huge Dougie Jones fan. It is a hill I will die on. I love Dougie. # Team Dougie.
You know, I think part of the problem might have been that the Dougie version, even though technically Dougie dies right away here, and we're actually dealing with Cooper, yeah. But the Dougie that everyone's referring to, who I think you're right is Cooper and is sort of a distilled version of him. He sticks around for a long time, and maybe that was part of where the acrimony was around the Dougie character, was that we didn't get Cooper sooner.
Get to we'll see it later as the episodes evolve, but just how people are just charmed by Dougie, even though he's basically acting like a human dog.
Right.
Yes, he is a golden retriever in human form. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. We do. The other thing is a pushback is we've seen Cooper now for like the first two episodes. Like he's in the waiting room or the red room or wherever you want to say, or that, and then for this one of the episodes we're talking tonight, that purple space, which I don't know if it has any kind of sort of a name. That part I do want to get into that because that's nightmare fuel for me. But but that's Cooper. There we're seeing Cooper. We're seeing him there. We're seeing him, figure things out. We're seeing him, deal with all of that. We do get Cooper. I think that people's critique that we don't get enough Cooper is misplaced in my.
Well, I think they want Cooper from the old show, right? Which they eventually get that for like an episode and a half.
About maybe 2 episodes.
Yeah, but I think that's what people are wanting.
But again, what the mantra I have for this entire season is you can never go home again. It's exactly that.
But I mean, and of course, I was watching these episodes last night, and my wife is like, why does everyone talk funny in this show? And I was like, well, these are the people in the lodge. They just talk that way.
Right. Yeah.
And then when he becomes Dougie, she's like, what's going on with him? I'm like, well, he was stuck there for 25 years. She's like, I feel like I was in there for 25 years.
Well, okay, so let's look at the top of this, because we see Cooper get banished into non-existence, right? That's the phrase that the arms evolved forms doppelganger says.
Right.
And so we're in this purple space. And this is like pure cosmic horror at this point.
Yes.
It really is. Because we, as Twin Peaks viewers, have never seen this space before. We've never heard of this space before. And it is absolutely so unsettling because of the way that it's shot, the jitteriness of it, the way that things speed up and slow down, and the weird language that Naito is speaking, and there's so much going on. So, you're Cooper. You the last time we saw you any place we could recognize was that box in New York City, and then boom, you're here, right? You've been flying through space and time, and you end up in this weird place. on the shore of some place that looks like something out of David Lynch's like transcendental like meditation dream. Like it's very eerie and weird and kind of gorgeous in its own right, but at the same time like really chilling. So what I thought was really interesting is that the woman that he sees, the one who's the regular woman, not the one with her eyes covered, Naito as she's known, or Naito, whatever. But the other woman is Phoebe Augustine,
right?
Who was, of course, oh God, her name just left me. With Laura, the second girl that almost got murdered. Why is this? I'm drawing a complete blank.
Oh yeah,
I've had a hell of a day today. I've been shoveling snow all day. Ronette Polanski, sorry.
Right.
So there's Ronette. Like it's one of those things where I'm kind of like, is this in this alternate existence? Like, could that be Ronette Pulaski? Is it just the actress by coincidence? Like, I've always kind of wondered, like, if Lynch picked her for that reason, because we don't know what's going on in the time space of this location.
Right.
Like, none of it makes sense. None of it looks like anything we've ever seen. And I do kind of wonder if casting Phoebe Augustine was a way to kind of insinuate that maybe this is some other alternate version of Ronette, who was not in the world of Twin Peaks, but is in this space. I don't know. It could be like she could be a tulpa. I don't know. Like, we never really get any explanation, but it's a very unsettling area.
You're not gonna get one from David Lynch.
No,
exactly. You're never going to get it from David Lynch. Right. But it's just one of those interesting places because it's very terrifying, because while you're also disoriented in the way the things are shot and the way that they're moving, you've also got that horrible pounding on the door.
Yes.
It is so like, it's so jittering and it's so like stressful, because Lynch is a master of sound design, and man, that is intense. So you get Naito first, who doesn't speak any language that we understand, has no eyes, very much like a blind person, feeling his face and everything, and trying to communicate with him in some way. And we start seeing the light socket looking thing on the wall, right? We see the numbers, and then they change the next time when we have Ronette. This is so disorienting and stuff, and it's definitely on purpose, because when Cooper gets out of this place, he is disoriented because he's now in what will become the Dougie Jones form. But in this space, I just found it again, going back and revisiting it, it's kind of pretty, and it's genuinely eerie, and it really goes hard in the paint on the cosmic horror, which we've talked about many times in this podcast, that is always kind of under the surface of all things Twin Peaks, right? Like that idea of where these things come from, where these spaces are. For me, like it's a hell of a way to open up the third episode, because you're just like, holy shit, where are we? And we are smack dab in it. Like there's no primer for it. You're just
it's about the first 15 or 20 minutes of the episode.
Yeah.
Before we get back onto what's going on the plane of existence.
Exactly, on actual real existence. Yeah. I just thought it was a really interesting space, because it's this weird little room with like, this metal door that something is pounding, that apparently is a mother. We don't know. Now, here is my question though. Do you think that could be Judy?
I mean, I definitely had those thoughts. For sure. I think whatever it is, it's it's a cause of concern, right? For the characters that are there. Clearly, it's not a cause of comfort. And it's presented to us as the audience in a way that is very unnerving and very unsettling. And so whatever it is, it does feel like it is a threat.
I'll just say this. Could this be the area where Judy and Bob and everything come from?
Oh.
So I think everything is ripped open by that fucking nuclear bomb?
Right. I mean, we did sort of characterize it as sort of non-existence, right? Which is very connected to.
Eventually see where the good cosmic side comes from too later.
Yes,
which we saw a little bit of that already, but we're gonna see
in the very first scene of this whole thing.
But we're gonna see more of that later, especially in episode 8. Maybe it's later, but I know we see it later in the show.
Yeah,
we do get No, go ahead, Colin. I'm sorry.
Oh, I want to comment on your talking about Ronette a little bit. So I believe she's credited, and I hope I don't have this wrong, but I believe she's credited as American Girl in the credits for the episode.
I think that's right. Yes.
And I think there's something about the fact, like if you think about sort of the role Ronette played in the series and the movie, she was basically this other character, right? She was almost, I mean, she wasn't nameless, she was named, but she was this sort of just other person that happened to be there, who fortunately got spared the fate that Laura did.
Yes.
But she was very much just this regular sort of other character that was there, and we never learned that much about her background. We never learned that much. I mean, we see her parents at one point. Like there's very little that we know about her or that we get into her story, and maybe that's what he was looking for, was to evoke that kind of just everyday person kind of.
That's very fair
to be there, especially with that name that is how the character is referred to in the credits. So I mean, that's just some thoughts on it. Again, I find this whole part one of the most disturbing parts of this series. There's a number of others. Like I'm really dreading watching the running over scene, because that part really just he gets me every time.
Yeah,
but this part, because it is just, you're in an environment, because it feels like even in the Red Room, even in what we've seen of some of these, extra dimensional spaces, that there's still a certain amount of, like, I don't know, functionality. This one just feels like it's just so contrary to our understanding of our own being, like how we exist in a physical space, the physics of that space, right? Yes. And the banging on the door, that just feels like something terrible is coming.
We climb up a ladder and we're like in like space practically, and there's a giant switch that has to be hit, and Major Briggs is floating head saying Blue Rose. Like it's such a weird ass place. Like it's so bizarre. But at the same time, like, I think what the difference is at least in the Red Room, okay, like there's structure.
Right.
Like there's structure. Like we know how it's going to move. We know how it's going to feel. And there is still some resemblance of normality. It's not complete, but there's at least, we know that people speak backwards and they play it in reverse, but it's basic conversations are had, and we understand. This is like, what the shit? Like it really is like out there, quite literally.
Yeah. Time is flickering. There's like, I mean, the Red Room has some of that sort of disorientation thing, like, as I said, like room after room being the same.
Yes,
for sure. But I think you're 100% right. This takes it to a whole other level of just complete, like, tapping into that kind of just loss of sense of how we understand space and time working at all, right?
Yeah.
That just makes us completely disoriented, and that's why I think that you were onto something by talking about this as being sort of a plane of non-existence, because it really is about tearing apart all of the pieces of us that are, right? And
it's funny how we see Naito here, and she falls off into like the abyss, only to finally come back at the very end. So again, there are cosmic forces at play in this entire thing. Like there genuinely are. And of course, when we get to episode 8, we'll talk big time about that.
Yeah.
But even here, we're seeing it. And I really, and I think I got it reversed. I think he sees Ronette's actress first and then Naito.
No, I think you had it right.
Did I have? Okay, I couldn't remember
first, and then comes
Naito
back
first.
Because she hits the switch, and then that's what sends her out, and then he comes back down, and
that's
now
right.
we've got Ronette, and then we've got to get into the light socket. The numbers changed. Yeah, that's right. The number changed. So again, electricity being a very big thing with David Lynch. We've heard that word many a time involved with this series. We've heard electrical static involved in many things in the series. And it's interesting that it's basically a light socket that is Cooper's escape from whatever the hell is banging on that door. I applaud David Lynch for just like using that Showtime money to just literally let his imagination go wild and make the visuals work. Like on network television, I don't know how he would have done this.
I was thinking that too. Like we would not have seen this episode on network television. Like the way, like, because Twin Peaks series, while it was subverting expectations, and while it was doing a lot of like stuff critical, like repurposing, it was still taking the television drama, especially soap opera format. This has thrown that out the window.
Oh, it's way out the
and
door.
it's like but there was no way, like there was no place. Could you imagine like seeing this and then going to a commercial? Like it just doesn't make sense, right?
No. Suddenly there's a commercial for like, Lipton iced tea. Like, no, nothing makes sense anymore. No, it definitely is like, it's so like, again, I love that he swung for the fences. Yeah. Like there was no idea too weird or off the table because he had the budget to finally really do it. So we go obviously from Cooper in this weird place into basically like an inflation looking image of becoming Dougie Jones. So now we have to talk about Mr. C and Dougie.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with them seeing the red room and knowing that Mr. C's time is up, that 25 years, the alarm has went off and he refuses to go in. And like we talked about, Dougie is kind of like his tulpa, like
distraction. He's basically like, if this is here, then that's where Cooper will go when he comes out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like it's his insurance plan.
I can stay. But even when Cooper Dougie is there in that abandoned home in Vegas, there seems to be things from the other side, particularly the woman and the child across the room.
Yes.
Because people ask about why is she saying 119, and of course Mark Frost's explanation, because Mark Frost will try to explain things.
Sure. He will.
And he says, well, I just think people would talk backwards if they're from another realm.
Well, and they talk about, he also talked about this idea of these like, abandoned suburbs that were built but never, weren't filled.
This is a decade after the recession, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like what happened to the housing market? So like there's a lot of these abandoned suburbs.
So if we're talking about non-existence, like there's these spaces that are just filled with this, and it's the desert, like it's Las Vegas, so you're in the desert where there's also nothing, right? Like it's an interesting setting for Cooper to come back into this plane of existence.
Also, I don't know if I brought this up last time we talked, when we talked about part 1 and part 2 with Lynch's comedy with these kind of quirky characters, but also the idiot gangsters.
Right.
Very weird how much the Coen brothers and David Lynch have a lot in common with like these caricatures.
Those parts feel very Coen brothers.
Yeah, there are Coen brothers like feelings through a lot of this stuff. We haven't got to them yet, but the Mitchum brothers feel like something right out of a Coen brothers film to me. Like, they do.
Yeah.
But we'll get to them. But like, I like the idea of, we've talked about, when they go into the red room, like when they go into the lodge, there's that smell of motor oil, right? Like they've talked about that. Mm-hmm. And we know the cream corn of Garmin Bozia. Right. And I find it interesting that what Dougie and Mr. C end up vomiting when the room is trying to take them back is this horrific mixture of the two.
Yeah.
It's this black oil, looks like motor oil with that creamed corn. And it's just the most awful looking concoction that's so bad that the cops who find Mr. C are like put in the hospital from smelling. It's that bad, right? Like that's horrific.
If you think about what those things, we even had the Garmin Bozia defined in the series as pain and suffering.
Pain and sorrow,
It does make sense that the people exposed to it would, suffer from
because it's exactly what it is. Yeah,
exactly. That's right. Yeah. So that makes total sense. There's a lot of interesting consistency here. Like people talk so much about how this isn't, the old series, but in so many ways it connects so interestingly.
Oh, it connects beautifully. Yes. I mean, to me, you can't tell me it's like not in the same universe. It absolutely is. Yeah. It's just not. You got to remember, it's been 25 years.
Yeah.
Everything has changed in the world, including this world, which you have to accept.
Yeah, because not only has Lynch and Frost aged and the actors aged, in fact, so many of the actors passed away, and a lot of them passed away after their filming, and even the ones that did pass away after their filming, there's so many people we're going to see. This is like practically the last thing they did.
Yes.
The actor.
Right.
Yeah.
But I like that. the whole setup for like it's interesting how well the series gives us the information that we need to understand who he is and what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Like that scene with Janie. I mean, it's got the humor, the Jenny gives two rides bit. It's
Oh God, Jade
funny.
gives two rides is one of my
The
favorite things
bumbling,
ever.
the bumbling gangsters. You're right, like all of that, like very, very entertaining because it's got this fun. And this is again where people are like, well, where's the quirky comedy? Like it's all there. Like
Dude, Jade gives
but-
two rides is like one of the funniest things ever. Like if I could get a T-shirt that just had that on it, I'd wear that shit. I would, because it's so.
But I love
so
her
great.
like character. She's like, because clearly she's like, such a professional, right? She's like taking care of business. Like something's happened to him. She makes sure he's okay. He is okay, but he's off. She makes sure that he gets to where he needs to go. Like she's taking care of business. Like,
but isn't it interesting that he has the same issue with his arm that Laura had?
Yeah.
With the arm that had the ring on it, because that's what's basically happening is he's being sucked back in. And we know that the ring does that. So it's interesting how that even carries over from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Like that totally comes back. And again, as I've said many times, like the great thing about The Return is Lynch was able to make Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me really have resonance and meaning in the Twin Peaks universe, because it is sprinkled all through this thing. And it's little touches like that. Yeah. I love the whole, like when Dougie shows up, like it's so funny because like you have to think like Agent Cooper would be fucking disoriented as all hell. He has literally gone through a fucking socket from a realm of non-existence, wherever that is in cosmic time space, into goddamn 2017 Las Vegas. Like,
well,
you're going to be feeling some weird shit when you do that, right?
That's why I think that the reason he is the way he is has more to do with the non-existent space and that than it does with the being in the lodge for 25 years. Because I feel like there's this like timelessness, and once you're there, you're always there thing going on. So I don't think that's what when he comes. It's the way he had to come back and the way that he was reintroduced into
because
that was so
as we'll
violent.
see later on, it's that putting the fork in the socket that brings it all back. So
he's having to go into the space where, because he was supposed to be switching places with Mr. C, right?
Yeah, right.
So maybe had that gone the way it was supposed to, maybe I think he still would have been disorientated, but probably not as severe.
Not to that level,
right?
Yeah, that's also part of it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely like almost like idiot savant type concept for Dougie. Like these things just accidentally. He's like the luckiest thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute with the casino. But like everything just goes his way, and it's like the inhabitants of the white and the black lodge help him out. Like it's really weird how it works, but he's just this wild card. He's like a chaotic good, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
The best way to describe him. If he was in D&D, he'd be chaotic good. Right. Because there's just all this chaos around him, but he always comes out shining. He always comes out helping people, and good always prevails in Dougie's presence in everything that we'll see in this season. And like you said, with Jade, you got to love Jade because she's like, he may have had a stroke, so I need to get him out of here. Yeah. So because she does what she does, he doesn't die in a car explosion, and he doesn't get killed in any way, shape, or form, and he makes it out, and he gets to be able to be reunited with Janie E and Sonny Jim, and everything is great. So I love Dougie. Like, I really, truly do. The second time watching it through, I loved him even more. And this episode, of course, is where it all starts. But my love affair with Dougie, I never got out of the honeymoon phase.
Well, and I'm glad that there's this. Sorry, I shouldn't say this because we're like so many episodes away from this. But I love that there's a happy ending for Janie E and Dougie, and like
the
and the boy. What's the boy's name?
Deliver them.
Sonny Jim.
Sonny Jim. Yes. Yeah.
No, if you don't fall in love with Janie E in this series, I don't know what's wrong with you. Because
exactly,
God, Naomi Watts, one of my favorite actresses in the history of anything. B just nails the assignment. Like, she is perfection as Janie.
I love it. I love her in this. We get this. So we get our first scene of her in I think it's in 4, but like, before we get there, she Janie the prostitute,
Jane.
She goes and she gets him to the the casino.
Casino,
And
yes.
So we
yes.
need to talk about the casino bit because that
Oh,
part
God.
is also
Well,
jazz.
and we noticed what do we find in his pocket, right? Like the
Right.
Great
Yes.
Northern Key.
That's right.
Which that's a big deal because that's going to.
Yep. And again, she takes care of it. She's like, "Oh, I know what to do with this. The old-fashioned thing where you could put them in the mailbox.
In the mailbox and it goes back.
I don't know if that still works. I mean, they don't really do keys anymore, but but they even say that later that they, it's one of our old keys because we don't.
They don't even use those anymore because they use the cards, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even the Great Northern has updated with their technology, right?
Yeah.
Again, 25 years. But no, I really, Jade is kind of like an unsung hero because like she really ends up putting Dougie on a path of like greatness.
Yeah,
she literally helps him avoid death, and a lot of good things happen because Jade does what Jade does. So
with everything up to the hotel key and that too. But yes, so he gets to the casino, and there we go. It's we get the jackpot, Mr. Jackpot. Call him,
Well, then he helps that old lady at first. She thinks he's crazy, and then when she sees that like the machines he's playing her, and she's like, "Which one?" And he points.
Yeah.
And I know that we're going to get to it later on, but I will say I love how her life is improved from this little encounter with Dougie.
But again, like you said, goodness and good things follow Dougie all around.
It's beautiful. Like it's so funny because you just get that wonderful hello, and it just every single time he wins, it's so fucking funny. But like, I love it every time.
It's the opposite, the compliment to Mr. C, where
people
die, people like all the bad things are happening to all these people, right? Like horrible things are happening. So it is
like literally at this point we have Cooper's dark side, which we know he has one, distilled completely in Mr. C,
right?
And Cooper's lightness and goodness distilled completely in Dougie. Like that's basically what we're looking at here, man. Like if you split that man in half, that's what you get. That's why I love Dougie, because Dougie is Cooper. Like the things that we love about Dale Cooper, the positive things about him that everybody loves, Dougie is that. I mean, it's a little different. Yes, the translation is a little different, but by God, it's still Coop.
Yep. But when he has that sip of coffee, Cooper's memories there.
Yes. How much he loves coffee.
Coming up.
He's like, the fact that they make him like follow him like a dog with the coffee is so great later on. It's just, again, we're all over the place with some of these things, but God, it's wonderful. But his whole experience at the casino is hilarious. I love the old lady getting mad at him for winning all the time, but then once he points her in the right direction, and then she's thank you, Mr. Jackpot. It's like, oh, every time, dude, every time that hits, it does. It's so sweet.
And I had forgotten that we get to see David Dashmalian, or however I never say his name. But I forgot we get to see him in this.
Assistant floor manager or something.
Yep.
Which is funny because I remember him being. I think it was on the Stephen King podcast when Boogeyman come out, and he talked about like all the people he wanted to work with, and he mentioned he wanted to work with David Lynch, and I was like, oh yeah, he did work with David Lynch.
Yeah, he sure did, and it's great. Like, I mean, everybody is so perfectly cast in every facet of this season. Like, there is not one bad spot of casting, even for small one-line people. Everybody is perfect, and David Dastmalchian is a wonderful addition to that universe.
The actor's name, who's actually the manager, he plays the crazy conspiracy theory guy on Stranger Things, but he exudes stress so well in this episode.
He does, because like again, we haven't got to the Mitchums yet, but we know that that's like who he reports to, and so he's real nervous that a whole bunch of money is going out in this dude's pockets, and like, man, what do we do with this? Like, this is bad. We can't find that he's like cheating the system. We don't know how he does it. There's no proof. It's again that chaotic goodness that surrounds Dougie is on full display here at the casino. I love it.
And we get the cartoonishly large bag of money.
Yes.
I know. I thought that was so good.
That's what changes Janie, because she is all mad at Dougie.
Yeah.
And she's like, how much is there's thousands in it.
Yes. Dougie, we can pay off all of our debts. And like they owe debts to these horrible people and shit. Oh, it's so
Well,
good.
I can't
It's so
wait till
good.
we get to that scene.
I know that's a great scene. But we get like what I like about this part is that again, like we think this narrative is going in a certain direction, like the hotel, the casino is going to clamp down on him. They're going to come for him,
Right.
but no, again, like it doesn't go that way. Partially because of Cooper's force and all of that, but also because. And in the end, it actually sort of makes sense. The way they handle it actually does end up making sense, right? Sending him home, and I just like that it doesn't go the way that you think
Right.
it's going to go.
No, not at all. It's again, there's you can tell that David Lynch really loves Dougie Jones.
Right.
Like you can really tell, and you can tell that Kyle MacLachlan does too. And you can really see that David Lynch was like, I just want to bring nothing but joy with this character. Like, I just want him to be the ultimate source of joy, happiness, humor, light in this entire thing. And he absolutely is. Like, I don't understand how people could not go back and rewatch this and not love Dougie. I really, really don't. I think there is so much charm in every scene that he's in. There are so many wonderful characters that we're going to meet in the Las Vegas area where, again, my favorite stuff of this entire return is in the Vegas area. Mm-hmm. And it's because of Bud. It's because of Janie E. and Sonny Jim. It's because of the Mitchum brothers and Candy and the girls. Like, it's all these wonderful things that get put, and Tom Sizemore even, shit. Mm-hmm. It's all these wonderful things that get cobbled together in Dougie's Adventures in Las Vegas that are just fantastic. Like, they're my favorite things to rewatch when I rewatch this thing. But I will say this was the first time that we really get to see our good friends, Gordon Cole and Albert,
yes,
and their new partner, Tammy, back in Philadelphia. And we get that wonderful David Lynch moment of, what the hell was that? It's great. Like, it's just great.
But what a tonal shift too. Before we move on to them, I just want to say, like, we just talked about how the first 20 minutes or so, as Cody pointed out, were this nightmare existential horror piece.
Yes.
And now we're into this charming oddball comedy, screwball comedy thing that is just so well done. And yet it all just flows like so well. Like
it does. Yeah, it really does.
I love the tonal shift.
It's very effortless, honestly.
Yeah.
Lynch and Frost really, they did their job. Like, they really did. And I don't think that the writing of this season gets enough credit. I really don't. They do so much in that 1 hour. Like, each week they were giving you a full, like, there are full-blown movies that I will watch that don't give me the level of intensity and enjoyment that one episode of The Return gave me. Like, it's just that good.
But you're right. Seeing, I excited to see Cole and
oh God,
like I want to add one thing about what you said, Kevin, with the Lynch loving Dougie and MacLachlan. So, I mean, this has probably been said a lot, and even though they didn't work much in that gap between the end of Twin Peaks and The Return. Sure. But I think Kyle MacLachlan is very much David Lynch's leading man. I think they have a lot. I think they are very simpatico in that
they're friends. Like, they're genuine friends.
America. They have this kind of sense of Americana, but they're both a little bit weirdos at the same time.
Yeah. Well, like, they love each other dearly. You can tell. I love that when you watch behind the scenes footage of The Return, that to that day, okay, and they worked on Dune from like 82 to 84, but to this day, David Lynch still calls Kyle MacLachlan Kale because that's how Dino De Laurentiis pronounced his name. So there are wonderful little moments where you see like Kyle MacLachlan coming around the corner and David says, "Hey, Kale!" Like, they still do it to this day, and they are like the bromance that everybody should aspire to have, honestly. Like, they complete each other so beautifully.
Well, I'm sure we'll say
Hitchcock
this.
and Jimmy Stewart. I mean, like, they just, they get it.
Well, Lynch found the handsome leading man to be his counterpoint caricature for his protagonist.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably say this many times over there, but I mean, this is Kyle MacLachlan's, like this, the return, I think, is Kyle MacLachlan's ultimate. We've talked about this in the Lynch context, but I think in Kyle MacLachlan's context, this is his ultimate performance. He's playing at least 4 different characters
it's 8
throughout
years
the course
later.
of this.
I'm still pissed he didn't win the Emmy.
Yeah,
Like,
he should
still
have.
pissed.
Yeah.
He won for the first season of Twin Peaks. He should have won for The Return.
Yeah.
It infuriates me that he did not. To this day, I'm
with you.
I'm mad for him.
And somebody else should have won an Emmy for this show too, but we'll get to her later.
Oh God, don't even get me started on that one either. Jesus, dude. Like, oh.
But no, I do think this is his. Like, I'm so glad that he was so eager to come back. Like, I know there was a period around Fire Walk With Me when he wasn't sure that he wanted to, how much he wanted to take, play this character over and over again. But I'm so glad that he was so committed to this, because like I said, that he plays 4 different characters. He plays them so well. It's just it's fascinating to watch all the way through. And each one is so different. Like watching him go from Mr. C to Dougie to the Cooper in the Dreams to all the things we're going to see him go through.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just
he put the work in, man. You can't say it any other way.
But in this episode, we get him as Mr. C. We get him as in the
as regular
space
Dougie,
as old Cooper, and then as regular Dougie, and then as Cooper Dougie.
So 4.
Yeah, right. And it's just this one episode, and in each one, you don't see him as the same person.
No. It's really stunning to me. Like, it's subtle things they did with makeup, but it's stunning to me how Mr. C looks so different from Cooper and Dougie. Like, it's not just the eyes, but there's just they even age him up more, the hair and everything. Like, he just looks so distinctly different. Yeah. And
he's evil because he has the worst hair.
Oh God,
in the entire show.
It's nasty.
So greasy.
It's so nasty.
It's motor oil. I'm telling you, it's motor oil.
Exactly.
He's coughed up a bunch of it, right? Like, we know it's there. But
should we talk about Cole and Albert?
Well, I forgot we do go to Twin Peaks really quick though, because they're trying to figure out what's missing from the investigation. So we do get a quick little the chocolate bunnies, right? Like,
so I do want to comment. I think Lucy has declined in the 25 years. Like, she is, I mean, she's always been odd, but she feels far more off her rocker in this series, in The Return, than she did in the original series. So, and I mean, I think that makes sense because, like I said, I think it's a 25 years is a long time. She could be going downhill, and Andy's probably, taking care of her so that she doesn't have to be. But her reaction to realizing that she ate a bunny, like, however many years ago, it's
hilarious. God. Well, is it about the chocolate bunny? Like, Hawk going through that process is so like
poor Hawk too, I feel like.
God. Working with Andy and Lucy, yes, poor Hawk. Let's put that
out. It's funny because we finally get to see more of the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department too. Right. We're like, okay, this is where Lucy and Andy are, but back here's where the actual work is.
There's where Chad and those assholes are. Yeah, like it's crazy, right?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, clearly their police budget has shot up since the 90s.
Yeah.
Their crime wave has like shot up too, as we find out later. So that's probably is somewhat responsible for it. But the sheriff's department is a different place than it was in the.
But it's like, it's still wonderful when you see Hawk and Andy and Lucy together, because that energy is still there, that chemistry is still there. And just Hawk, like, honest to God, like, he's so great. Michael Horse does such a great job with him.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, like, from people who've met him at conventions, like, he is just the coolest guy in the room. Like, and he exudes that in this series. To me, he always has been the coolest guy of the Bookhouse Boys.
Now,
like, he's just
was he deputy chief in the old show? He wasn't, right?
No.
So he's been promoted.
Yeah, he's been promoted.
So.
Yeah, he's been promoted. And we've got just seeing them in that room with all that evidence from the original, seasons of the show. Like, it was a really surreal moment. You get her homecoming picture, the chocolate bunnies, the diary. Like, it's all
the bit with Bobby. It's so we're introduced.
Is that this episode, or is that the next episode?
It's 4. It's in 4.
Okay, it is 4. Okay.
So it's but it's one of those times when it's like, okay, so there's a character, right, that we recognize, and where is he at? What's going on with him? We get a little bit of introduction. He's on the police force. That feels crazy, even though it makes so much sense as it all sort of plays out.
Yes.
Seeing Bobby have really come to where he's at now, is very
it is
positive and inspiring.
Yeah, it's a character arc of redemption that I didn't know that I needed,
right?
But was so glad that I got it. And so I know we're focusing more on episode 3 tonight, but I will just say this: like when I was taking my partner through this, she hated Bobby Briggs.
Right. Well,
I mean, rightfully so.
Yeah, rightfully so. I did too.
And when she finished this season, she was like, I would have never in a million years thought that I would tell you that I like Bobby Briggs. But she's like, but honestly, like his redemption in this season is so good. And I was like, you know what? It really is. And it's one of my favorite things about it. And I'll be honest, like I've never understood how Dana Ashbrook has not gotten more work. Like I've never understood that. He's a good looking guy, damn talented. When he sees that picture, the Niagara Falls Frankie Angel, when it hits, dude, like that's genuinely great work. And I remember when he walked in the room in that uniform that I had this thought of like, Bobby? And then it was just like, oh, Garland Briggs would be so proud
he would.
of seeing him. Like I started thinking about that wonderful speech that he has at the diner about the dream that he had of his future. And I was like, man, like Bobby finally got it figured out. Like he got his shit together. And it was one of those moments that the second time I watched it, like literally brought tears to my eyes when he walked in. I was just like, man, like Garland Briggs, who was a real one, man, we cannot say that enough.
Right.
But all I thought when he walked in, I was like, God, Garland Briggs is so fucking proud of his kid. And I love that for Bobby. Like it's
well, this scene,
I didn't know I needed, but God, I'm glad I got it.
Yeah, this scene does so many good things because it's reintroducing Bobby. It's connecting us because that scene with the picture, so it connects us emotionally in a visceral way to the old show. I actually think this arc I also hated Bobby in the original series, but I feel like by the end of the original series, he was on the start of this journey. Like it doesn't feel inconsistent. It's not like it's just like he was one thing and then we're supposed to assume that 25 years later, all this stuff happened and now he's this.
No, you're right.
You can connect it. But it also connects us to, because he makes a comment about how Cooper, even though we know it was Mr. C, was the last one to see his dad alive. That's going to be important to the plot as it goes forward. And it also will, explain a lot. So it's accomplishing a bunch of things all at once, but very efficiently and also very, from a dramatic point of view, very effective because emotionally it really pulls us in.
It does.
It ties us to just how important Laura always was and always will be.
And always will be. Yes. But from there, I guess we can go to Cole and Albert and Tammy. Because here's where we see the real reveal of what happened to the two kids in the room in New York, where their heads are basically missing their faces, man. It is such a horrific image when you see that shit. Like you're just like, oh God, that's awful. And then of course, finding out that Sam and Tracy, that was the two people. But getting the call that Cooper's in South Dakota, just Gordon Cole will always be one of my single favorite characters in the history of anything, not just Twin Peaks, but in goddamn pop culture history. I love Gordon Cole so goddamn much. And he's one of those characters that every line he has ever said is just great. Like it's just great. Kind of girl that makes you wish you spoke a little French. I mean, come on, man. Like he's the man. And just that wonderful, what the hell was that? Like, goddamn, that gets me every time.
And it's basically just David Lynch, right?
It's literally David Lynch 11. Turned up to 11. Quite literally turned up to 11. But how wonderful is every single scene that we get with Gordon Cole and with Albert. Those two, again, the bromance I didn't know I needed so much of, and I'm so glad that I get what I get out of this season. Those two play off each other so beautifully. They really genuinely do. Well, I really love, and we'll see it later on, I love how they almost have a playful relationship. Like Cole will say something and Albert's the first one to call him on his bullshit.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I love that they're at that point where even though he is his superior, Albert can literally walk up to him and say, "You're full of shit, Gordon."
Right.
And I know I'm right. And they're cool. Like, that's really one of my favorite things about their relationship here is like Gordon Cole is the leader of that little trio for the Project Blue Rose stuff, but he doesn't look at Albert as beneath him. Albert is absolutely an equal. And I really, really love every scene with the two of them.
I feel like that's really consistent with Gordon's character too, and I think he was in that
very respectful.
He is. Cole is a very respectful
guy. The people he likes and loves, like his colleagues, like even though he's their superior, if he thinks they're good at their job, he's going to defend them. And we get that beautiful scene
and trust them.
Denise later on, when they're calling him out about Tammy. And
yes. That's a great scene. I want to talk about that scene. Like, it's just the one scene. So we get a couple of one and dones in 3 and 4. Like, whether it's Wally Brando or Denise Bryson. And I mean, we talked about Denise when we were talking about the first season and just how amazing her characterization was for the time. You know, it's interesting now because now she's back and now we're actually in this time pretty much. I mean, it's many years later now, but still, I mean,
Gordon's superior.
He's purposely put her, like, he being Lynch and Frost, they put her in this position where now she has demonstrated her, you know, capabilities to the point where she is running the FBI.
Yeah, which
like,
is awesome.
Which is a huge statement that they're making. Gordon Cole is very respectful of her, but they have, again, the conversation that they have. I, like you said, Cody, I love that she called him out on this and that he didn't push back. He didn't like feel like the need to disagree. He just sort of accepted like who he is. And then we get that scene a little bit later where the other, what's the young agent's name? Sorry, I'm blanking
Tammy.
Now. Sorry?
Isn't it Tammy?
Tammy is walking away and they make a comment and you're like, okay, so like, I love that, you know, that conversation is just great. And I get that, you know, having David Duchovny play this character remains somewhat problematic, but again, just the way he did it so respectfully, the way the character is written so respectfully, it does sort of feel like they just really are paying just very great respect to a lot of things, and it's just a very beautiful scene that also moves the story forward. So we get that little bit of the glimpse, and it's relevant to the story, and I just was really happy. That scene, I was so glad when I was rewatching it again. I was just like, I've forgotten how much I really like this scene.
Well, you get the beautiful, you know, and I told them all to fix their hearts or die.
Yes,
like, goddamn, man, it's such a great line. And you know, Gordon Cole did that. Like, you know, for a fact, he was up in someone's face saying that shit.
Yeah,
and he said it on more than one occasion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everybody heard it. Yes. One person's who he said it to, but the whole goddamn room heard it. Right. Like, Gordon Cole is just one of those characters that I love because, again, it's the respect that he shows.
Goodness.
Everywhere he goes, like even when he's coming into someone else's, you know, jurisdiction, there is respect for the people who are working there. And honestly, like, wouldn't we all love to have a supervisor like Gordon Cole, like someone who trusts you to do your job, who believes in you, who supports you, who will literally be there to like help pick you up when you fall down to say, hey, it's okay. We'll figure it out. Like
Gordon Cole has your back. He believes in you. He lets you do what you're good at and your strengths so that, you know, take it like it's just, you're right. Like he's also this, you know, but he's still, like I said, they show us that he's human and he's got like, he's smoking all the time. And he's he's got this sort of thing with the younger, even though he never does anything inappropriate with her. Like,
no,
that's the other.
The only woman we see,
sleazy.
The only woman we see him with is a French woman in his hotel room who's not Tammy. So like, we never see him do anything with Tammy. That's exactly. He may like to look at her, but he doesn't do anything unsavory. No.
And he points out that she is very qualified, and it turns out that she is. She's not there just because of how she looks.
She can pull a gun on someone real quick. I'm just saying. We'll see later on. Tammy can murk you quick, man. I'm just saying, put that out there. She can murk you. I got no problem with Tammy. I know, and that's one of those characters that's so weird. Like, so there were a lot of people who did not like Tammy when this came out.
Right.
And I'm just like, I don't really see what the issue is. She's an interesting character because you need to have that surrogate new character so that they can give the explanations they need to give.
That's
and
right.
it makes sense. Like, you have to have someone there for that exposition to play so that it's not just exposition dumping. It's character building and it's establishing scene. And
it would feel weird if Gordon and Albert were explaining to each other stuff.
Exactly.
When
they all know this shit. Yeah.
But
so
the thing I
it's
love,
really, what's that?
Is this the thing I love about the Gordon Albert relationship is also, you know, he allows Albert to call him out, but like he's fine with Albert being this sarcastic smartass and kind of rude to everyone, but he's like, because Albert's good at his job, he's like, forgive Albert for his sense of humor.
Right.
I mean, even Cooper has that for him. Like, even Cooper's like, he's rough around the edges, but I mean, he's really good at what he does, and everybody respects Albert's skills, man. And I love that Albert has that kind of respect continuing through the return. Like, I really appreciate that he is. He's a little bit softer because he has found some peace through the words of Gandhi.
Yes, right.
He's a little bit softer, but he's still Albert.
He's still Albert.
Miguel Ferrer still gets to be.
Jabs.
Yeah, he still gets to chew the scenery.
I'm so glad that Miguel Ferrer survived to be able to play this part because it's such a great part for him, and it's so wonderful for us that we get to experience it. I love the bit in the car when he's like brings a photo of Mount Rushmore because he knows that Gordon Cole's gonna be disappointed they're not going to Mount Rushmore. I just thought it's like he's got like a. It's not. I don't want to say this. I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's almost like you have it like with a toddler. Like you know, like you have to
have that juice box and cheese stick in the car, right? Like you've got to have that ready, and he's totally got that ready. No,
exactly.
It's charming. It's
he takes care. They take care of each other.
We're in South Dakota.
Yeah,
car sick.
Car sick.
God, that whole bit was great. The quirky humor of Twin Peaks. When people say, "Where was it?" I don't know what they were watching.
I don't know what they were watching because I'll tell you right now, some of the hardest laughs I've ever had in my life are in this season. When we get to the episode where he's in the room with the French lady, okay, like that right there. There's about 5 minutes that I did nothing but laugh for the entire fucking scene. There are master
Bellucci dream.
Oh my God. There are master classes in comedy all throughout this season. I mean, the Mitchum brothers, god damn, dude. Candy, god damn. Every scene she's in, I'm laughing at. So like, we're gonna get all over the place because there's so much going on.
Like, there's so much good humor in this.
God,
but
there's so much.
Yeah, so
chock full.
We'll try to stay focused on these two episodes. But I mean, and it's jumping ahead a little bit to the end of the 4. But I also really love watching Gordon and Albert when they talk to Mr. C, because that whole conversation again, tone shift, big one. The way Cooper the way that I associate him so much with the role now.
Yeah.
The way Kyle MacLachlan plays that scene, the way he talks, like you're like, can you try to sound like a human being? Like it's very E-Rev, good to see you. Yeah. Yes. Like it's those little things, man. Because the first time I watched it, I'm like, did he just say E-Rev? Like, what? Did he really say that backwards? Like, fuck, that's crazy. It's creepy, right? Yeah.
Everything with Gordon and Albert, we'll come back to that because God, there's so much good stuff that's coming up. Like, okay, so all right, if we're going into episode 4, well, we get, of course, Dougie with that ridiculous stack of money going home.
Yeah.
And we finally get to see Janie E. And we finally get to see that, you know, we learn that actual Dougie Jones was not a good guy.
No.
He's got debts. He was doing horrible things behind his family's back.
Yep.
The dude is nothing but like it's okay. So actual Dougie Jones, the Tulpa Dougie, is an absolute albatross around the necks of Janie E and Sonny Jim, right?
Yeah.
But this Dougie Jones ends up taking that weight off of them and making their lives better. I love how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
But we get just Dougie going home in the car, right? And the guy's trying to figure out which house is yours. Like, which one is it? And he just keeps saying, like,
and all
red
he
door.
knows is
Like,
red door.
it's dark. I can't really
door.
see what color the door is.
The other guy.
That poor man driving him in the limo is just great. He's great. Again, every even little character is so well cast.
Yeah.
But Janie, the way she talks him down when he gets out of that car, dude, it's so funny. Like, even goes off on the limo driver. Like, Janie E is a pissed off woman. I don't want to be on the other side of that. I don't.
Nope.
Don't want to be on the other side of that. I love, like, so we don't know anything about Dougie, the real Dougie. Okay, when episode 3 happens, other than he's a
prostitute.
He's with a prostitute. That's all we know. Now all of a sudden he's got a home life. He's got a wife. He's got debts. Like, holy shit. Dougie Jones is like the actual.
We're gonna find out he's crooked and that he was bad at his job.
And he's a terrible father. Like, and you're like, oh God, he has a kid. Like, shit, this guy is terrible. But it's all gonna get better. But it is one of those things that's so jarring in this episode. We don't know anything about actual Dougie's life until all of a sudden, boom, he's got a house, he's got a wife who's pissed at him, gambling debts out the wazoo. Like, oh my, Dougie Jones has had a rough life. But it's, again, we all know it's going to get better, but it's again, from the audience perspective, it is a hell of a revelation that suddenly he's got a wife played by Naomi Watts. And it's just going to go from there. So I love
had a bad haircut. And he was a little overweight.
Little overweight. But, you know, then we get like the whole thing about like where we start seeing again the inhabitants of the lodge, where Mike is much more, again, because I think a big part of it is because Michael J. Anderson didn't come back as the man from another place. Mike ends up stepping up, you know, to be what that character would have been. And I really think if Michael J. Anderson comes back, he's in all these scenes, not Mike. That's my genuine thought, is how that would have played out. But we get to see that Mike there in the red room is trying to help him. Like, he is getting the help. Now, of course, we saw that with, you know, the pattern of the floor above all the different little casino machines that he went to that helped him win. So we know that this space, these inhabitants are genuinely trying to help him, which is really interesting because normally the connotations of that space are very negative. The last time Cooper was in there, of course, now he's trapped in there for 25 years. But it's interesting seeing these inhabitants helping Dougie. Like, it's a really interesting perspective because it's not what you would think would happen. Now, granted, we know that there are bigger forces in play, and it's kind of like, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But I really love the shift here because I always liked, you know, Philip Gerard, Mike, you know, when he was on the show. I always liked that character, and he definitely seemed like a good guy trying to help out. Even in his lodge form, he seemed like he was still trying to help stop Bob. Like, we know that he was not on a friendly level with Bob. So I really love seeing Mike be able to come back and be, you know, almost like his Jiminy Cricket in a lot of ways in this whole season. So I love the fact that we still have that connection to the Red Room, that Mike's there, and he's the one that basically tells him, like, dude, either you come back, you know, or your other guy comes back, but something's got to give. We can't have two of you out there in the world, man. Like, this is not good. So we know that there's even more at stake now because Mr. C is in prison, which means he can't get back into the lodge, even if he wanted to. Dougie is not all aware of what's going on, so he doesn't really know what's going on. So again, that cosmic, the cosmic levels are always in play. And I love the fact that we're even seeing it here with the idea of the two different distilled forms of Cooper. They cannot be out there together like that.
But I think it's interesting what you're talking about there because, you know, remember from the old series, we did, you know, Mike did talk about being Bob's partner and before he tore his arm off. And and now we see them, like, you know, we haven't got there yet. That'll be in the next episode. But, you know, Mr. C is going to confirm that Bob's still with him. In a way, you know, Mike it's like each one of them is now with one of the Coopers.
Yes, they are.
But they're doing it, of course, in different ways because evil and good would work in those sort of different ways, right? So and maybe his way, because he was a former, you know, because he was like Bob, maybe he's not as good at being, you know, the good, you know, the angel sitting on the shoulder than Bob is good at being evil. I don't know, but it's interesting that there's that sort of like.
No, they each have their own. Yeah, you're exactly right.
So each one of them is with one of the Coopers, and you're right. Like, both the Coopers can't stay. There needs to be some kind of resolution to that sort of conflict, and they're like, and Mike's, I don't know, not picked aside, but is doing his bit, right? So I find that part interesting. So in some ways it makes sense that it was Mike, not necessarily the man from
that's
Little
true.
Place.
It does.
But I think but it's definitely interesting to see him interacting in that way with Cooper, and especially since Dougie is still so disconnected from who he is and what he's trying to do.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. Like, and then of course from here we get to see, and I think this is the first time we see Sheriff Frank Truman. Am I correct?
Yes, this is the first.
So Robert Forster,
the late great Robert Forster is Harry Truman's brother.
He's so good in this season. Like, let's just get that out of the way right now. Robert Forster is good at anything you put him in, dude. Like, that guy is just a steady Eddie. You put him in a role. The dude made Alligator work, right? Like, he's just that guy. And I can't remember the last thing I had seen him in. The most significant thing he had done before this was Jackie Brown, which got him a lot of Oscar talk for his work in it. I want to say maybe he got the nomination, but I think for the Golden Globes he did. But he had started to kind of have this resurgence, and then here he comes, in Twin Peaks: The Return. And I love Frank Truman. Like, I miss Harry, don't get me wrong, but Michael Ontkeen is retired from acting. He just was not coming back. This is a great substitute. If you can't bring Harry, bring his brother, and bringing in a phenomenal talent like Robert Forster to play this part was a genius pick.
And we don't know it yet because right now we're just sort of being introduced to him, but he's going to have this very sort of pathos-filled arc, right? Yeah. Like we're talking a lot about the light and kooky humor right now, but his story is going to be, and it's not dark. It's tragic. It's sad. It's very human, and it's going to really be one of the grounding stories, I think.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. It is a very grounding place. He still works in the chemistry of the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department. Like, he totally fits in. He doesn't feel like, oh, that's a forced character. I wish they wouldn't have done that. No. He's great. No,
I think he was originally who Lynch wanted for Harry back in the day.
Oh, that makes sense. I can see that. That makes sense.
And of course, he would have been a recurring character had Mulholland Drive been a TV series instead of a movie.
That's right, because he worked with him in Mulholland Drive. That's right. Yeah. No, like Robert Forster is just always. Ever since I was a kid and saw The Black Hole, I liked Robert Forster. Like, he's just one of those actors that. Anything you put him in was just better because he was in it, period.
And you were right, Kevin. He was nominated for Jackie Brown, but of course he lost to Robin Williams that year.
Yeah. But I love that he got recognized for that. And to see him be here is so great. Because, again, if Lynch wanted to work with him again, it's great that he got to. And this is one of the last things he did before he passed. So I'm glad that he got to do something of such significance and such, greatness as far as his character portrayal goes, that he goes out on a beautiful note.
Yeah, and we get
he's the steadiness.
Which is what Harry was.
Exactly, it's exactly what Harry was. Exactly.
All these quirky and vile people, because it's like two extremes coming at him, right? And he's just like the steadiness that's holding it together. Like, even in the whole Wally Brando stuff, as weird as that scene is, he's just very thankful, matter of fact.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect segue into Wally Brando. But I just want to say before we do that is that yes, he does provide the steadiness. He interacts well, and I think it also just makes sense from a narrative point of view. In a town like Twin Peaks, you can totally see when one sheriff retires or gets sick. I think it's in the narrative is that he's sick. Is that they would because you guys like elect your sheriffs in these towns and stuff, right? So they would elect his, but like it just feels like that makes sense, right? But let's get into Wally Brando. This is one of the a one and done, but such a memorable thing. Like, and also connects us to the series. When we left Twin Peaks last, Lucy was pregnant. There was a whole plot line around her baby and now we get to see the glory that is. And it's clear that Dick was not his father.
That is Andy's son.
That is Andy's son through and through. Yeah. So we get Michael Cera in, honestly, maybe the most spectacular 5 minutes that like he will ever have. And I love Arrested Development. We put that out there.
Yeah.
I love him as George Michael, and he has many great moments on that show. But this is like the pinnacle of all things Michael Cera for me.
Yeah.
So like the fact that he is Wally Brando, right?
Yep.
So Brando is in the name. But the fact that he shows up looking like
Marlon Brando from the Wild One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talking like Marlon Brando from the first Godfather.
Yeah.
With the motorcycle, the hat, it's perfection. Yeah. But like,
which I mean, one, Lynch is obsessed with old Hollywood.
Oh God, yes.
Yes, and that's why he cast so many people that have like these legacies that were like young kids from old Hollywood or Nepo babies who are related to people of a Hollywood legacy. Like, there's always this connection with old Hollywood with the people he worked with.
Well, and even in the storytelling, I mean, the Wizard of Oz, Sunset Boulevard, always are coming up, in his work. Sunset Boulevard, boy, big time, particular in this one. But yeah, so you get the call, from Lucy that, Sheriff, Wally's here, and he's like, oh yeah, I gotta come out, and he comes outside because he's a cordial man, that Sheriff Truman. He's a cordial man, much like Harry before him. Yeah, and there, on his motorcycle with his hat cocked, there sits Wally Brando. And he gives one of the funniest fucking monologues I've ever seen someone give, with the straightest of faces. Yeah. And the most almost monotone delivery. And it's basically just like saying that I came back to tell my parents that they can use my room. Yeah. It's literally this huge
the whole thing,
about traveling and finding himself. Oh God,
and weird. Lucy and Andy are standing behind him like he's giving they're so proud,
the proudest
they're
fucking
so proud of
like
him.
he's giving the valedictorian speech or something.
Yes.
Like it's just such a beautiful thing. And Robert Forster is standing there going, like, you can tell he's just like, what the hell am I listening to? But okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks for. And he keeps talking about how he's paying his respects. Like it's like I said, like it's such a clichéic sort of Brando sort of thing.
Oh, it's perfectly Brando. Yeah,
but it's beautiful.
Oh God, it's really one of those things where it ended, and I almost felt like I just woke up from a fever dream. Like, did that really just happen? Did I really just see Michael Cera as a character named Wally Brando? And he just gave this amazing monologue about basically saying, Mom and Dad can use my room. Like, holy shit. Like, again, my friend Brian, as soon as the episode was over, he calls me, and the first words out of his mouth were fucking Wally Brando. And we sat and laughed about that for like the next 15 minutes. It's one of those things that, like, again, it's that genius and madness of David Lynch. Like, only he could give us Wally Brando. No other person on the goddamn planet could have given us Wally Brando. Like, it just would not happen. But it's at the same time, A, yes, that is definitely Andy's kid. B, he is so perfectly old school Twin Peaks that he would have fit in just fine in seasons 1 and 2. Like, you would have had no problem having that character exist in 1990-91 in that universe of Twin Peaks. He would have made perfect sense in that territory. But at the same time, I love, like you said, it's Lucy and Andy and the way that they are just fawning over him. They're so proud of their son, and I love that. It's so sweet, so genuine.
I love that. Yeah,
it's so sweet. And seeing Sheriff Truman just listen to it all. Doesn't say anything. Doesn't interrupt him.
Doesn't roll his eyes.
Doesn't. No. And he's just like, well, thanks for stopping by. And just that's it.
And even tries to give out some kind of saying that he's just making off the top of his head. Sounds like something Wally would say.
It's so perfect. And it's one of those scenes that when you talk about the return, Wally Brando is one of the first things that will come up when you start thinking about it. And it's just such a perfect little moment. Like, it really is. It's a perfect moment. It's funny, it's charming, it's sweet, it's weird, and it is like the most perfect Twin Peaks moment, maybe the most perfect old school Twin Peaks moment in the entire return. I think it may be.
And I feel like it's got payoff. Like we'll talk about other threads that wrap up from the original series that maybe have an even stronger payoff, but it does give us a little payoff. There was this whole narrative about Lucy's baby, and now we get Wally Brando, and he's riding off into the sunset, and it's like, okay, I can let that go. No, that's great.
It's all done, right? It's all done.
Yep.
We now know
happy ending. Yeah.
We know that it's Andy's kid. We know that they raised him well.
Yeah.
We know that he's out there living his best life, and they're proud of him, and everything's good. Like
exactly,
we're good. You're right. That has been tied up with a bow. Set it aside. Now you can focus on other things.
Now, talking about characters who mock things, and we'll get more into this guy later as the show revolves. But the character of Chad, which this guy is
fucking Chad.
He always plays like the schlubbiest, sleaziest people.
He always plays a Chad. That's what it really comes down to.
The cop who hires a hitman to kill his wife's mistress and Barry.
Yeah.
So, but he's here cracking jokes about all the Twin Peaks. Like, let me go consult my pine cone.
Yeah. Because he does a whole bunch of negative log lady stuff, right?
When you make fun of the log lady, you're gonna have a whole bunch of people coming after you, dude. And I mean, the fan base, I know for a fact. You want to make this guy an asshole and make people not like him? Let him make fun of the log lady. Let that happen. And watch the fan base fucking turn on that asshole like that.
Well, and that's why, like, we're introduced to him. We immediately find out he's an asshole that we're not going to like. And that's very effective how they get
We're going to find out he's even
right
worse
away.
than just being an asshole.
Yeah, we are. We're going to find out it's even worse. But for right now, we're starting out with just like, oh, yeah, because it used to be they had, like, in the old series, again, when they were a much smaller department, there was this family. And now there's this larger department, and some of them are jerks, like, and they're not all like, so we're learning about how things have changed in Twin Peaks, and that's one of the
switchboard
pieces.
Lady seems nice.
Not everybody back there is an asshole, but Chad definitely is. Like, there's no question.
No, but it's a different place. That's what I'm saying. Is we're learning that this is now a different place. Things have changed, things have evolved, they've grown, and not all of it's great.
No, not everything has improved for the better.
No.
Well, from here, of course, this is where we go to the scene with Gordon and Denise, which, again, wonderful, wonderful moment. Talk about, again, a great payoff for Denise's character.
Yeah.
We've already talked about the scene, but I think it's great to just really quick, just mention that I love seeing that, Denise is not a character who was forgotten.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Denise comes back.
That was like, what, a couple of episode arc with them?
Yeah. Right. But you only get them for one scene. But what a great scene that it is. And the payoff, and again, it does set up things because they've got to get to South Dakota now.
Yeah.
But it is a great, great moment, and David Duchovny plays it beautifully.
Yeah.
I know it seems problematic to cast someone who's not, trans into a part like that, but I think David Duchovny did it with absolute respect and absolute dedication. That I can't imagine anybody feeling like it was an insult to the community.
No, and I don't remember there being uproar.
I don't remember really anything about that either.
I think we talked about this in the original series. I remember reading some pieces where if there's, there was sort of a general sense of, how respectful it was at the time and how little of that there was on TV, and that there was a certain amount of, okay, we can grandfather this in because it's in some ways, was helpful to a lot of people at the time. But no, again, very respectfully done. The company plays the role well. It's written very well. It's respectful of the character. It shows her as a powerful and competent and good character. Like, there's just everything about it just feels good. And like you said, it moves the story forward, has some great development of Cole's character.
Yes.
And so everything about it just works.
And it makes perfect sense that Gordon Cole would be the most woke person as far as like the people beneath Denise. Gordon would be the most woke. Like, he'd be the one that would be absolutely fix your hearts or die.
Well, we were talking about how he supports his people when they're good, when they do their job, and we're being told that Denise is very good. And so of course he would have her back.
Yep.
Yeah.
No question.
Stand up for her. Yeah.
No question.
I kind of want to go on a side tangent for just a second, and you might want to bring it up as we get further along in the series, but because Garland Briggs' head is here, and because we're talking David Duchovny, there's a lot of speculation had season 3 happened back in the 90s. Twin Peaks probably would have done X-Files before X-Files did X-Files because of a lot of UFO stuff going on. Like
Frost was very interested in that for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, hell, Chris Carter has said numerous times Twin Peaks was an inspiration for all things X-Files. Like if Twin Peaks doesn't work, the X-Files probably never happens. And maybe that's even how he discovered David Duchovny. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, there's definitely, I agree. If it would have gone on, I think it would have been X-Files before there was X-Files. Absolutely. And in some ways it already kind of was. You know, there were already those kinds of things out there. What I do love about when we get to the end of this episode, they go, of course, to South Dakota to see Cooper and everything. I love that it's that wonderful little scene where Cole basically tells Tammy to go over here, right? And
go in the restaurant.
Yeah. And he turns down the hearing aid, you know?
Yes.
And it's like in a whisper. And it's that whole thing. And if I love that the tone of the film grade looks blue.
Yeah.
There's a blue tone to it. And you get that wonderful moment of Albert saying, like, I think this could be a Blue Rose case. And Gordon just response was, it doesn't get any bluer. It's such a great moment. It's amazing what that little 2-line exchange does, because it tells us that A, they've been working on these kinds of cases in the 25 years since we've seen them. B, they're fully aware of that this is something bigger than just some weird happenstance. They know there are bigger powers at play. And see that they truly have each other's backs in this shit, because they know that this is not going to be an easy case. And of course, this is what sets up the one person who can help.
That's not the real Cooper. Like, they're like, something's off.
They know
something's wrong.
And that's why we have to get a certain person to come in. They've got to get her to look at him, because if there's one person who will truly know if that's Cooper, it is the name that we heard dropped so many a time in 1990 and 91. And that is the name of Diane. And while we still have to wait to get to her, let me just say that the payoff there is fucking phenomenal. Good grief.
And we're going to find out that Gordon Cole's been involved with this a long time.
Very long time.
Yeah.
And could be involved on a higher level than we possibly think. We will have a lot of speculation to talk about at the end of this season. But there are theories out there that Gordon is way more involved on a very high, almost spiritual level that we cannot comprehend. So I love that we're getting in this level of the metaphysical and the cosmic. Like, it's what you would have never suspected watching the first episode of Twin Peaks, that was where it was going to go. I love that whole side of it. It's what separates it from so many other shows. And honestly, there are so many shows that do take on the ideas of the supernatural or occult or metaphysical, and they don't do it nearly as well as Twin Peaks. It's so weird to me how in an episode that has, you know, Dougie E and Dougie going home to Janie E, that has, you know, Wally Brando and all this, and yet still you can weave in this cosmic terror and this metaphysical logic and this dream state, and it all feels completely connected. It feels totally weaved together. And I don't know how Lynch and Frost do it. I don't know how they can keep it straight in their heads. But man, these two episodes are so chock full of so many great moments of all over the place. Laughing, terror, drama, feel good. Like, it's all horror. It's all there, man. And it just works. I still sit in awe of this entire thing. It is such an accomplishment.
So I think when you mentioned something about how they keep it straight in their heads, I think that Mark Frost tries. I don't think David Lynch cares.
No, that's fair. Lynch just goes with the flow. That's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
He probably says "what the hell" all the time.
Yeah, what the hell? Yeah, like it's you know, like, hey David, we need to get this scene of a guy sweeping. Do you want to shorten it? What the hell? Why would I? That's how it would work in that bar. Look at that floor; it's terrible. Like, it's there's something. I don't know. This season, the second time going through it for me, it felt more like the original Twin Peaks than I originally thought that it did. And it's all those little things that we've been talking about. Like the humor is there. The quirkiness is there. The terror is there. The drama is there. It's just 25 years later. Yeah. Even if you think about comedies in 1990 and 91 and look at comedies in 2017, they were very different films, right? They were still comedies, but they were different tones. But look at horror films. Like it's the same thing. Like it's changed, but it's still those core components that make Twin Peaks are absolutely still in The Return.
Well, I think the first time you watch it, you're just so struck by all the differences that
yes, you are.
On. But then once you watch it again, you're able to start connecting those threads and seeing those, whether it's the plot points, like we talked about, the way that things are connecting to the original series or the movie, but also the tonal connections and so that it does. I think I agree with you. I think that when I've subsequently watched this, it's felt more cohesive with the whole rest of Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
on the very first watch.
Yeah, it feels more like it belongs to sit up on the shelf with 1 and 2 because it really is an extension of what those things were.
But I'm so glad that it's not just recycling.
Yes, it's not just a recycle. It's one of those things where, like you said, the first time, like I said, I was calling my friend Brian in Florida every Sunday because we were just like, oh my God, we've got to talk about this. And it is one of those things where the first time you're watching it, there's so much going on. And it is a different tone because again, it's 25 years later, but you're right. You're trying to still comprehend like all these new characters, all these new locations. I was expecting it to just be in Twin Peaks, like not South Dakota, not New York City, not, Virginia, not Las Vegas. Like,
yeah,
it's all over the goddamn place. But that's what I love about it is what The Return does is it makes Twin Peaks more epic.
Yeah.
And it makes something that was very intimate, very epic. Exactly.
Just a town problem.
Yeah.
If we're talking payoff too, I just wanted to make a comment about the lead into Diane, who they don't identify. I think we know that that's where they're going. Like the line, first of all, it's great that there's this whole like, okay, we have to get her, and they're just talking about her. And I love the line where he says, "No, I don't know where she is, but I know where she drinks," which is such a great line, especially for now once you meet Diane. But I think what I wanted to talk about was just how, so for the longest time Diane was this just like she wasn't a character. She was this, there were even theories that she didn't really exist, that he was just using her as the diary, a name that he was.
Some people said that was the name of the tape recorder, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The tape recorder was Diane, right?
Yeah. And then there's a little bit in Fire Walk With Me. Is it just in The Missing Pieces? No, it's just in The Missing Pieces where he's talking to her, but you only see him.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's like standing in a doorway. So
yeah. You can just see him looking at her. You don't see.
Yeah, it's in the Philadelphia FBI office before Jeffrey shows up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's always been this character that we've been able to that we've known very little about, but we've been able to infuse with so many things. And now we're going to get to meet her. Like, again, what a payoff this is. And in some ways, so glad that it is, because what we get is so amazing. And we're not there yet, but I love the lead up to it. I love that the show even just teases it a little bit first, because it knows how impactful it's going to be. It knows how, what a character she is going to be. I remember when the lead up to this series and the promos for it, everybody knew that Laura Dern was cast. She'd worked with David Lynch before a number of times. And so there was this connection that they had. You knew she was going to be playing somebody important, but you didn't know who. And, there might've been some theories. I remember not putting together that she was going to be Diane until it really happened. But wow, like this, Diane is one of the great characters of this arc, but when you look back now, you can see like she was there all along, and that's just really incredible in terms of the way he connects it all.
Yeah,
when that's revealed, and we'll talk about it, but it just makes total sense. Of course, that's who she would be.
Of course, yeah.
Well, and two, like, think about what a ballsy proposition that was, because the fan base has had their own ideas of who Diane is or what Diane is for 25 years. So when you're going to bring that character into the fold, like, damn, that's going to be dicey because there's going to be some people who would never accept it. But I think the minute you see Laura fucking Dern sitting there, you're like, oh, okay. And for me, like, when this ended, my first thought was, okay, she has to be Diane. Like that was my first thought. Like, it absolutely has to be Diane. And that night when I talked to my friend Brian, I believe that was when we both basically said that has to be who Laura Dern is. Like, why would you put her in this and not have her be Diane? Like, that was what we were both like. We pretty much made peace with that was what was going to happen. And of course, that's what happened. But I remember, like, that was something we both went real hard in the paint on. Like, dude, who else would it be? Like, we know he loves Laura Dern. She's been in, you know, many of his projects. She's a fantastic actress in her own right. She's, again, that Hollywood Nepo baby kind of thing. Like, he loves that connection to old Hollywood. Like, why would it not be her? Why would it be anyone else but her? And the great thing is, as we'll talk about later on, that is one of the best pieces of casting in this entire season. Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, that woman really can do anything. This, if someone tells me it's their favorite performance of hers, I get it. It may be mine, honestly. Yeah. It may be mine.
Well, and good for Laura Dern for having such a great, like, renaissance in her career, right? Like, so many actresses suffer at in her age range, and she is knocking it out of the park, getting amazing roles, doing amazing stuff, and still is. Since this was sort of really leading into sort of some of the kickoff for that, and good for her, because she deserves it. She's an incredible actress.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Before, around the same time as what was that show? Big Little Lies? The one with
I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
She's been rolling since. Like, it's good for her. Like I said, it's well deserved. And
I mean, she even got to go back to the Jurassic Park franchise, for crying out loud. I mean, she's been out there doing it. Yeah. No, it's really like these 4 episodes, like, they really are a great kickoff to this whole season. Like, you get a lot of things put into play, a lot of new characters, but everything is still, like, there's still a lot of mystery to be had, obviously, when you don't know what's happening the first time you're watching it. But I really love that even in these 4 episodes, even with the newness of a lot of things, there is still enough of those pieces of the familiar, enough of those connections to the original series, that even for the first time going through for, you know, a newcomer into the return, there's enough there to keep you engaged and to keep you, like, connected to why you loved the first 2 seasons, why you loved the movie and the missing pieces. Like, there's enough connective tissue there that even if you don't see it, like, it's back here. Like, your brain is processing that there is a connection there. And I really love that. Like, it doesn't have to spoon feed you. The original series didn't. So why should this? And Lynch, as again, why we took the detour with the films that we took, those films don't spoon feed. And those films basically are where Lynch was as a director when he made this series.
Well, and the other thing, like, again, like, the first time you watch it, you're a little bit sideswiped a little bit, maybe, I don't know. But when you're watching it again, like, it's actually, wow, he's setting up a lot of what's going on here. Like, there's this basic plot of, like, the Cooper issue, right? Which is always what people were upset that Fire Walk With Me was not. So, like, you know, what Doppelganger Cooper has been up to, we're getting that. The conflict between good Cooper, bad Cooper, you know, and who gets to stay and who has to go back to the lodge, whatever, however you want, like, that's all being set up. The mystery of what's going on with the bodies and the, like, like, when you watch it again, you're like, okay, I do actually see this as an opening act of this story, right? A chapter 1 of these stories, because it really is setting up the story that's going to be coming.
Everything that's going on in these 4 episodes is going to have some form of payoff when you get to the end. Other than that lady saying 119. Other than that.
Pretty much everything gets paid off now. Is it the payoff you wanted? Maybe not. But
maybe not. But you will get it. I think for me, like, you know, when you look at these 4 episodes, especially these 2 that we talked about tonight, like, there is just so much good stuff. Like, I don't know, for me, like, I enjoyed it the first time I watched it, don't get me wrong, but the second time was such a much more rewarding experience. And that's the sign of good content, when you can rewatch it and still find it as good as, if not better than, the first time.
Well, it's
you watched it.
consistent with the original series too, because that's
Exactly.
how that was too.
Exactly.
And another thing of just the quality of this is, you know, when you've watched movies or shows multiple times, you usually don't have to be like, oh no, I know what's going on. I don't really need to.
Yeah.
Not this,
I can.
You need to absorb this.
I can multitask. I can look at my phone, but no, with this, it's kind of like, oh no.
Yeah, you got to keep on it.
Yeah.
And again, maybe that's where a lot of people were kind of miffed by it, because in 2017 and forward, we're a society that's constantly on our phones, which is why Lynch even had that statement of, you can't watch a movie on your fucking phone. Like, yeah, he's not wrong. Like, that's not how they were meant to be seen. But in this world of TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram, like, that's where everybody is. And so I think a lot of people may have had, taken offense to the fact that this is a show that you can't do that with. Like, we're not about to let you like start thinking you can look over here when you've got to stay focused here. That's where Lynch wants you to be. That's where Frost wants you to be. And by God, that's where the show keeps you.
Side tangent again, just talking about shows people have to pay attention to. I know people that told me they weren't going to watch Shogun because it was subtitled and they couldn't multitask while they were watching it. I'm like, well, just watch the show then, because it's that good.
Yeah,
like it's not a hard lift. Like, it's really not. Like, I don't know. Like, for me, I've always been a movie geek, so like I love watching a movie, and I don't really want to be on my phone when I'm watching a movie, especially not in a theater. Like, god damn, like nothing makes me more mad than people on their phones in a theater like that. Oh God, talk about pet peeves. Like, that's
no kidding.
That's a mighty one right there, man. Jesus H, like, why are you here?
Yeah.
If you're gonna be on your phone, like, why are you here? But with Twin Peaks: The Return, like, for me, like it definitely sucks you in. And even if the payoffs aren't exactly what you want, there are payoffs to pretty much everything going on here. Some may even be more subtle than you think, but they're there. When you look at now, Cody, I can't remember, is this your first time going through it or second time?
This is gonna be my third now.
Third time. Okay, I can't remember because you came into all of it about the same time, right? Like you watched seasons 1 and 2 like right before this hit, right?
Yep.
Okay, so for you, I mean, obviously you didn't have 25 years to permeate on.
No, I didn't have 25 years on what's gonna happen.
Then this is kind of an interesting perspective from your side. Then, what was it like going from having just watched seasons 1 and 2? Like, having them fresh in your mind going into this, did it feel as jarring to you? Like, I was kind of wondering about that.
It probably not as jarring as to many people that watch the original show, like even if it wasn't the original run, or if you watched the original, definitely. But maybe if you watched it during the whole Bravo era in the late 90s, early 2000s,
or during one of the home releases.
Yeah. But I already immediately was like, this is different. This is different from the old show.
I'd really be curious.
Familiarity, but it's also different. This is something else. And we talk about like these episodes, especially episode 3 with the whole first 20 minutes, like that would not play on a network TV.
No.
Now, you know how he ends most of these episodes, which is not very controversial, but would network TV allow you to sit there for 5 minutes while a band just plays?
Right.
And there's no characters talking in the background, or we're just listening to the band play.
A really good point. I'd be really curious to see how, to talk to someone who their first experience with Twin Peaks was just watching The Return, and they had never seen any of the rest.
Wow, that would be.
It'd be really interesting to see how you process all of it. I'm sure it's interesting and possible. It would be a very different experience than
the first question I would have would be, did you actually finish it? Because you were probably like, what the shit is this? Like, oh my God in heaven. I don't know why anybody would ever want to watch this. So
in the Returns, initial broadcast, the first 4 episodes were shown in 2 chunks. So the 1 and 2 back to back, 3 and 4 back to back, and then they went to a weekly schedule. And so I've suggested that we go to a weekly schedule. I think there's going to be so much in the next few episodes to chew on that we could just do episode 5 next week or next time, and go from there. I don't want to talk or think too much ahead on these ones because there is so much in there that I really want to sort of process as I'm watching it through. This is also my third time watching through. So, and I say it's my third time watching it through, but when it was during the original run of The Return, I would watch the episode 2 or 3 times for each episode. So in some ways I've watched, I guess, the series through, but it doesn't really count. It's like rewatching it all the way, I still count all of those rewatches as the first time through as one time. That's because fair. I was taking it all in, right? But I think for this one, I'd like to really just chew on the next couple episodes on their own and
I think I think there's enough, especially 5 through 8. I think there's more than enough. God, 8 in particular. There's more than enough that we could have enough content for one episode a hit. I'm very okay with that.
Yeah, because I just don't want people to have to watch this for 3 hours, melding through some of the stuff.
Right.
We ramble. We ramble on enough already. We don't need to. But I think it's. It's exciting to. I feel like this part of the discussion is so interesting because I have such a history with the seasons 1 and 2 and Fire Walk with Me that this one still feels, even though when you think about it, it's been 8 years now. Yeah. But I just feel like I have so much less of a history with these ones. So there's still so much that I'm absorbing when it
still feels new. No, I'm with you on that. It still feels new. And because we haven't had 25 years with it where we watch it once a year kind of thing. Like we haven't had that time yet. And it is a lot. I mean, that's one thing about it. Like these 18 episodes, it's a lot. It's not something that you just like watch casually. And I don't know that I would want to watch it like every year. Oddly enough, I kind of do that with season 1 of Twin Peaks. At least once a year, I'll probably watch the first 8 episodes. But it's one of those things that I find that it's definitely rewarding to rewatch it. It has, again, I think it's one of those things like, like when you fix like a stew, right? And it's great the day that you fixed it, but you let it sit in the pot overnight. Yeah. And the next time you fix it, it just seems better because it's had more, all the things have had more time to like simmer together and just adhere, right? And it feels like that with Twin Peaks: The Return. Like when you rewatch it, it just has so much more like payoff. Like even though you've already watched it and you've seen all the things happen and you've seen the payoffs that are there, there's just such a more, I don't know. The first time it's such a shell shock of all the new stuff and so crazy. The second time I felt an even stronger emotional connection to it. I think that's the best way to describe it. I'm not saying I didn't have emotional moments watching it the first time. I absolutely did, but I felt more emotionally invested in it from the word go the second time around.
Well, and also if we prep like we did with watching all these other Lynch projects, I think it gets you even more immersed into what's going on and what he's doing with this.
Well, for me, like, I think that's why I wanted to take that detour. I just felt like going into The Return, that detour was kind of critical to get where Lynch was at that point. Because again, that was one of the biggest things that people complained about was this doesn't feel like the original Twin Peaks. Like, what's wrong with David Lynch? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with David Lynch. If you've not watched anything of David Lynch's since 1991 on ABC, you really don't know the director that you're watching. And this is like Brazil was for Terry Gilliam. This is David Lynch with a paycheck and Unleashed, and no one in check. Like everybody just stand back and let him do his thing. And there's so much payoff to that. But again, this is for 18 episodes. It almost feels like double that because there's so much going on. Each episode, even though it was only an hour after this point, each episode feels like 2 or 3 hours worth of content. I mean, like it's very dense. I guess that's a great way to describe it. It's very dense, not in a bad way, not like in a War and Peace way where you're like, oh God, I'm never going to get through it. It's just there's a lot to discuss. So I'm with you, Colin. I think the one episode at a time from here on out be the way to play it.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it. When are we doing the next one?
So that's the question now, that we're going to move to one episode for a while, and that's fine because there's a lot to discuss. Did we want to try and do more of this on a weekly instead of a bi-weekly basis, or do we want to keep up with the bi-weekly?
The bi-weekly is still going to be a little bit easier on my end because we're getting ready to go into February, which is a very busy time for me. I've got 2 weekend events in February, so I really couldn't do weekly going into February. But like,
well, okay, so here's the question: and if February's super busy for you, because I think the 26th I'm going to be busy. Is the 2nd busy for you, Kevin?
No, the 2nd would be okay.
I can make that work.
Okay, so let's do episode 5 for the 2nd.
Yeah, that would be fine.
Or part
That's
5,
great.
I should say, not
Part
episode.
5, yes, part 5.
Sorry.
Yes.
Part 5. Excellent. All right.
All right. Well,
Now, like I said, during the week, anytime you guys want to get together for one of these is totally fine with me, man. I'm happy to get together and just chat. Like you said, there's a lot we can
Yeah, I
learn
would love
still
that.
about each other, so I'm happy anytime.
Yeah, I'm up for that too.
yeah, you just let me know and we can.
Yeah, I'll even let you know about the super nerdy side of me that does toy photography and stop motion animation. So, you know, and then you'll be like, oh God, why do we let this guy on our podcast? We don't want to do anything with this guy anymore. He's too weird. And we're Lynch fans.
I think that sounds interesting.
All
Okay,
right,
guys,
thank you
well,
all.
Yeah,
you
thank
did
you.
that.
It was so
Yeah.
great to talk about it, and looking forward to the next one.
Always a pleasure, guys. Seriously. And really quick, though, to those who might be out there in Los Angeles, if you'd happen to see this, please know there are so many people whose thoughts are with you. We were so very relieved to see that David Lynch was able to get out from where he was. So thank God, he was out of there too. But, Lord knows the devastation here is something that's going to be felt for a long, long time. But please know there are so many people out there pulling for you. And we just wish you all the very, 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 very best of what is right now a very horrific situation. I can't even imagine. I have had a house fire that I dealt with, but this is on a very different level.
Yes.
And I can't even begin to pretend that I could understand what it's like. To those firefighters that are out there putting up the good fight, man, thank you. And please know there are people all across this continent, man, who are behind you guys and believe in what you're doing. And Los Angeles, you're an amazing city. You're gonna rebuild. You're gonna pull it back together. It's gonna be okay. It might take some time, but please know there are a bunch of people out there praying for you and putting thoughts out there for you and positivity for you. And I know there are people doing fundraisers all over the place. So please know you're not alone, and people care. We really do care. So I just want to put that out there before we close up.
And I want to say on top of that, thank you to our brothers and sisters in Mexico and Canada, because we are not just one country. We're a continent of North America.
Yes, we are.
So thank you for coming for our aid to our citizens there in Los Angeles who are suffering right now.
Even if right now sometimes our country doesn't deserve you, we appreciate that you're there helping out, man. Yes. Not everybody feels the way that a certain orange Cheeto feels. I'm just going to put that out there. Not everybody feels that way.
All right. Well, thank you guys again. I always love your passion and enthusiasm for discussing this, and I can't wait to talk the next time we get together for the next episode.
Stay safe, guys.
Yeah.
Stay warm, both
Stay
of you.
warm.
We'll do our very best.
All right.
Much love from West Virginia, guys. Have a good night.
You too. Night.